KHSTV, Germantown Community Television, your hometown news and information station.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Crosstalk. I'm your host, Alex Jarman. Each week we take a look at different issues, personalities, and events that affect you and our community. One of the most influential entertainers of the 20th century was Memphis's own Elvis Presley. From his humble beginnings in Tupelo, Mississippi, Elvis Presley skyrocketed to international stardom and became one of the world's most recognized celebrities. Elvis revolutionized the music industry by creating a basis for the rock and roll sound of today's music. Recently named one of Entertainment Weekly's top performers of the millennium, Elvis's music continues to touch the lives of many, even after his death in 1977. On today's show, we will be talking with close friends of Elvis Presley, including Jerry Schilling, who now is the president of the Memphis-Shelby County Music Commission, and Sam Phillips, the founder of Sun Studios. First, I would like to welcome to our show the one and only George Klein, a Memphis entertainment legend in his own right and a lifelong friend of the king of rock and roll. Welcome to the show today, Mr. Klein.
Hey, Alex. Thank you very much. I appreciate you guys having me out here.
Well,
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for being here. Well, to start off, to begin with, when Elvis was young, little did you know that your close friend Elvis was going to become a rock and roll icon known now well into the 20th century. What kind of relationship did you have with Elvis Presley?
Well, Alex, what happened was we met in high school. I was going to Humes High School, a school over in North Memphis, and ironically and coincidentally, we're in the exact same class, all the way from the 8th grade until the 12th grade. And I was class president. I was editor of the yearbook and editor of the high school newspaper there. And I became sort of buddies with Elvis while we were in school. I would MC some of the high school functions, and Elvis would perform in the talent shows. And we became sort of buddies, not real close, but good friends. And then after we got out of high school, I went into radio and television in Memphis, and Elvis started recording for Sun Records. So we became even closer at that point.
Mm-hmm. Was he really as much of a country boy as so many people say?
Well, he wasn't so much country as he was just a man of the times. We were all had that feeling. We all talked with Southern accents, and we all subscribed to Southern cultures that were going on at that time. We weren't so much country. I don't remember Elvis being that. He did like country music, and we all kind of liked that because that was the music of the day at that time.
Mm-hmm. Well, Elvis had very humble beginnings as well. How do you think that these beginnings drove him to succeed?
Well, I think with the humble beginnings, they helped him as he started to make it in show business because he became a very nice guy. Mm-hmm. Alex, I never saw Elvis refuse an autograph. Never saw him refuse to shake hands with anyone. And he always said, yes, sir, no, sir, thank you, and please. And that went a long way for him. Mm-hmm. And it was from those early humble beginnings.
Yes. Well, he was also supposedly a little bit outlandish and flamboyant growing up. How was Elvis looked upon by his peers in high school?
Well, they didn't understand Elvis, and they didn't know where he was coming from because Elvis had long hair. In 1953, Elvis's hair was as long as the Beatles' hair was in '64, and that wasn't cool at that time. The fashionable thing at that time was a real short hair or crew cut. But Elvis had long hair, and he had it slicked back, which wasn't cool at that time. And he wore a little bit of a sideburns, and that wasn't hip at that time. And he dressed differently, but he was making his own statement in a nice way is what he was doing. And so he kind of stood out. And the peers, pertaining to your question, actually didn't know what to think about him.
Mm-hmm. Well, were there any hints or glimmers of talent that he showed? You mentioned that he performed in the school talent shows.
Oh, yeah. Well, I remember the first time I heard Elvis sing was in the 8th grade. It was a music class. And he asked the teacher if he could bring his guitar to school and if he could possibly sing instead of having our regular class schedule that day, if we could do Christmas carols and things of that nature. And he brought his guitar to school, and that's the first time I'd ever heard him sing, and he was 12 years old. And I guess it was a subconscious thing that I wanted to be in show business, but I was taken back by his talent at that point. Mm-hmm. And from those years on up until our graduation, I admired that he could sing and play guitar. I just, because he was the only guy in the school that could do that. It wasn't cool in school to do that. Athletics and school politics were the thing that you got into, and not singing, but he did that and did it very well.
Well, did his peers respect that, or were they just kind of...
Well, I don't know if they respected it or not, but they were aware of it, and it made him stand out in his own way. I don't think he got a lot of respectability in high school, no.
Well, what was one of your fondest memories of the two of you growing up?
Well, was when he first got that First Son record. When he got his first recording, I was just trying to break into radio, and I couldn't believe that a friend of mine had a record out, and when I saw him, I was overjoyed for him, as he was happy himself. And I couldn't believe that here was a guy that I went to school with that had a record out, and that I heard sing in high school and class functions and high school talent shows, and it really was a thrill to say, hey, that's my buddy, you know.
Well, we have some pictures of you and Elvis Presley together earlier and later on in his career. We're going to take a look at those now if you want to talk to us about them.
That's a picture, Alex, of when I got hot in about 1957 in Memphis radio. My ratings were very good. And that day, Elvis came by the radio station to visit with me. He had just made a motion picture called Love Me Tender. And he came by and just popped in, and we did about a 15 or 20 minute interview, and I'm sorry to say I didn't record it. But we did capture it on video, which you're showing right now. And you can tell by the turned up collar, that was the thing to do back in those days. That was a copy from Jimmy Dean in the movie Rebel Without a Cause. Elvis had his collar turned up, I had mine turned up. You can see our hair was kind of greased back and long, and that was the beginning of rock and roll, and that's what you call a real rock and roll picture right there. Now you've jumped ahead to, I think it's 71. That was my wedding picture. I was the only guy in the world that Elvis, Alex, was the best man at a wedding for. And when I got married in 1971, Elvis was my best man, and we got married in his suite in Las Vegas in room 3000 at the top of the Hilton Hotel. He was performing there at the Hilton, and he paid for the entire wedding, and he just blew me away by being so nice about the whole arrangement and all. And I have a whole nice group of pictures from that event, and that is the one that we pass out there that you're showing on TV today. And you can see Elvis really looks great. He was beginning to let his hair get a little longer and wear the sunglasses and all.
Well, how did your and Elvis's relationship change from the beginning of his career in high school to the end of it? Became
even closer, Alex. After we got out of high school, you'll find out as you graduate, I think you're going to go to New York or something. So the kids at Germantown are going to spread out. You won't see a lot of your friends anymore, except maybe at class functions or class reunions, or unless you go to the same college. Well, that happened to us in high school. All of our friends just scattered when we got out of high school, except Elvis and I were in the same business. I was a disc jockey and a TV performer, and Elvis was a recording artist, so we had a lot in common. So I began to hang out with him and began to visit with him at his home. And then there was a point in my career that he hired me to travel with him. So I traveled with him and worked for him from 1957 to 58, and then in 58 he went into the Army. So to answer your question, we became even closer after we got out of high school than we were in school.
Well, how did you notice fame affecting Elvis as he grew bigger and bigger?
Well, fame affected Elvis in that he became sharper. He became a good interview person. He started really developing his looks. He became extremely handsome. He was aware of his hair. He was aware of his wardrobe. He became aware of his presence, and in the public, he always wanted to look like a star, and he did. He really looked like a movie star early on, so he didn't have to work too hard on that. But he became more aware of what he was and where he was going.
Well, thank you very much for being on the show today, Mr. Klein. We look forward to hearing from you on the radio and whatnot throughout Memphis. Thank you very much for being here.
Okay.
When we return, we will talk with Sam Phillips, the founder of Sun Studios. Stay with us.
This is David.
Oh, hi.
This is what David's done. David went to college. Annapolis. David taught himself to play piano, the sax, even the bagpipes. Well, maybe not the bagpipes. David was NBA Rookie of the Year. He's also been to the Olympics twice. David even became a naval officer. David's sure done a lot. But you know one thing David's never done?
Drugs.
David doesn't do drugs. Maybe that's why he's done so much.
In today's multicultural, interconnected world, things change really fast. The only way to compete globally is to get a global education. As a YFU International Exchange student, you gain the knowledge and the skills that will prepare you to be a world player. If you're between 15 and 18 and have the guts to jump out of your familiar surroundings and land in one of 30 countries around the world, you're the type of student YFU is looking for. Call 1-800-ARE-YOU-READY and ask for this free book on international exchange for high school students.
You're watching the award-winning GHS TV, Germantown Community Television, your hometown news and information station.
Welcome back to Crosstalk. I'm Alex Jarman. Today we are taking a look at the life of Memphis's own Elvis Presley. We are most pleased and honored to have on our show Sam Phillips, the founder of Sun Studios and the first person to discover Elvis Presley. Welcome to the show today, Mr. Phillips.
Alex, thank you so much for having me on the program. And first of all, I'd like to say I'm very impressed with your facilities here and the personnel that I've talked to and run into since we arrived just a few minutes ago.
Thank you very much. Well, to start at the beginning, though, when you first met Elvis, he was a kid right out of high school. He was driving a truck for an electric company, and he came into your studio to record 2 songs for his mother.
That's correct.
What was your first impression of not only his music, but his presence as well?
Elvis made a very fantastic impression on me, and he'd never been in a recording studio before. Sometimes that's rather taxing to people that have been in the business for quite some time, as I know you have found out from working with TV and audio. But I was very much impressed with his voice. Thank goodness it wasn't overly trained or anything. It was just in the raw. And when he made this demonstration record for his mother, a birthday record, I put his name down and how we could reach him, and I was going to record the prisoners in Nashville, some prisoners over in the maximum security prison. And I told Elvis that I thought maybe I might find some songs over there. I'd wanted him to come back in after I came back from Nashville and see if we couldn't audition him for possibly a commercial record.
Great. Well, I'm sure that Elvis was also a dream come true to you in many ways. What was it about Elvis that drew you to him?
Elvis had a certain innocence about him that I think is so absolutely great in especially young people. I like for people to be, pronounced in what they're doing, not afraid of what they do. But I also think innocence is a great thing to have. And the mixture is a combination that I tried to get out of my people when I recorded them, all the black artists that I'd worked with before Elvis. I thought he had, in many ways, one of the focuses that could be developed orally and visually, because even though he didn't look quite like he later looked, he had a look about him that I knew if we ever cut an audio or a record on him, that was a success. That the way he looked and his demeanor and manner certainly would add to his impact.
Well, on his demeanor and manner, some people say that contrary to his wild, outgoing stage presence, he was actually quite shy at the beginning of his career. Is this true?
Elvis was one of the shyest people, I believe, actually to the point of really being timid. But that didn't bother me at all, because auditions are the toughest thing in the world to do, as I guess you know, being in the business here. But you have to know how to work with people that have that type of reaction, and I think most of us do have it, especially in the initial stages of your contact with being on camera, or back then, of course, being on a microphone. So that was one of the challenges that I had, and Elvis was a good candidate and a good student.
Well, his music, he certainly did not become a music legend overnight. How do you feel that his music evolved from the beginning of his career to the end of it?
Oh, I think that Elvis, it took a while. Actually, we worked with him. At first, he didn't have a band. In fact, he was kind of a loner, as we were talking about, and he didn't want to bother anybody and this sort of thing. Most young people that were interested in music as much as he had a little combo they played with and for fun or whatever. In this case, Elvis did not. So I had worked with Bill Black and Scotty Moore. Bill played the bass, the old upright dog house bass, we call it. And Scotty played a very different type of guitar. But I knew Scotty had a lot of patience, and I knew working with somebody like Elvis, you needed somebody that wasn't going to be too demanding initially with him. So we call it woodshedding. That means get together at Scotty's house or Elvis's house and practice together and get a feel for each other and kind of know where each other was going, because all of this was done what we call head arrangements. I mean, nothing written down, just what you felt you did. So it was easy to see his progression, but it did take a little while to really find the thing that we wanted to do with Elvis. Not that right from the beginning, he could have been an excellent ballad singer, but I wanted to touch the young people like you, you know. They didn't have a lot of music back then. They really did not. There was some R&B things out, but outside of that, you went from a child's record through all the teen years, which are the toughest years of anybody's life, up to adulthood with the big bands, which I love. So I was after doing something for the younger people. And Elvis was a good candidate, but I knew I had to do something definitely up-tempo. I mean, because we had the Frank Sinatras and we had the Tony Bennett's and the people like that at that time, and they were fantastic. But it worked out. We did That's All Right, Mama and Blue Moon of Kentucky, and it was the right thing after a while. Yeah.
Well, we have some pictures of Elvis during his earlier years at Sun Studios, so we're going to take a look at those now, and if you could talk us through some of them, that'd be great.
Let them see my profile over here.
This is the...
Oh, that's what we call the $1 Million Quartets. That's when $1 million was $1 million. And the one on the left would be Jerry Lee Lewis, a fantastic artist, developed into one, but he came in raw just like Elvis. Next one is Carl Perkins, who is standing in the center. After that is Johnny Cash. And of course, Elvis is showing off at the piano because he always loved to play the piano. And he came in. This was after I had sold his contract. And this was one day in 1956 when I was doing a session on Carl, the guy in the middle, Carl Perkins. And so happened that Johnny Cash dropped by, and Jerry Lee there was playing on Carl's session because Jerry had not recorded for me at that time. So we got together and just had fun singing mainly hymns all afternoon at the studio. We broke into Carl's session and just had fun with Elvis visiting. That picture there is the one on the left. Well, they took it down, but the guy on the left was me. I mean, the good-looking one was on the left. And then I believe that's Elvis over there, it seems like. But that is a picture I wouldn't take anything. That was made by one of the photographers from the United Press, Leo Soroka, was with United Press, and they worked out of the Commercial Appeal building at that time. So Elvis was in to visit with me, and this was also after I'd sold his contract to RCA. But I called him and said, Elvis is here and everything, came up and we made that picture and wouldn't take anything for it.
Well, we could do an entire show talking with you about all of this. This is very interesting, but our time is running short today. So thank you so much for being on the show today and starting to tell us about Elvis's beginnings. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Alex. It's such a pleasure to be here. And anytime you want me to come out and mess up your screen, I'll be glad to do it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
We have to take a short break now, but when we return, we will talk with Jerry Schilling, the president and CEO of the Memphis-Shelby County Music Commission.
Are you a pack rat? Do you have old junk you just don't know what to do with?
Use it or get rid of it.
Transform that old junk into beautiful works of art. Watch I Did It Myself with Susan Thompson, named the best instructional arts program in the country. Susan shows you how to beautify your home without spending a lot of money.
Don't buy it.
Do it yourself with Susan Thompson, only on Germantown Community Television, Cable Channel 17.
Best friend thing.
I've known Danny since preschool.
Me and Danny, we like to wrestle and stuff. Punk rock.
Fifth grader girl.
They're so dumb. They're goofy.
He's a good basketball player, a good dribbler, good thrower.
I love math. Give me a break.
At Easter Seals, we know the most important part of being a kid with a disability is being a kid. With your support, we offer help and hope.
You're watching the award-winning GHS-TV, Germantown Community Television, your hometown news and information station.
Welcome back to Crosstalk. I'm Alex Jarman. Today we are looking at the life of one of the most famous personalities of the 20th century, Elvis Presley. I would like to welcome to our show Jerry Schilling, a close friend of Elvis, who is now the president and CEO of the Memphis-Shelby County Music Commission. Welcome to the show today, Mr. Schilling.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks for having me. It's a real honor.
Thank you for being here. Well, one of Memphis's most famous tourist attractions is Elvis and his home Graceland, and it's brought a lot of popularity to Memphis. What do you think about Elvis's icon and his music that has brought all this recognition to Memphis?
Well, you know, Elvis, we all kind of grew up at a very special time in musical history where a lot of different types of music was coming together. And Elvis had no prejudice. He liked all kinds of music. Mm-hmm. And I think he just did as a lot of us were listening to. He had the ability to emulate and perform and stuff. And it was a creation of an American music taken from some of our best art forms in American music. Blues, rhythm and blues was really big at that time around the 50s. And I think Elvis, us young kids as teenagers at that time, we're always looking for something different and something that is our music that we can identify with. And at the time, the Hit Parade was real popular, and it was great music, but not what we wanted to identify with. And Elvis, he put it all together, and that was the start of rock and roll.
Mm-hmm. Well, Elvis was one of the first major teen idols. How do you think that he shaped America and beyond with his music?
Well, you know, I think his music was the catch, and it was the driving force. But I think Elvis shaped America in many ways. In the 50s, it was a good time because it was after the war, prosperity was coming about, and it was a pretty, at least down here, it was a pretty conservative society, which was a good thing at that time, but Elvis opened up things. He was a guy that wore a pink shirt. So today we can wear pink shirts as guys. And I think he, you know, kind of opened up a lot of freedom for men as far as artistic. And I think that was a big part of what he did. And thinking as well, you know. It didn't have to be one type of music, you know. Elvis opened it up, made it very controversial, the fact that here was a white boy doing blues music and rhythm and blues music. And I think that was, you know, him and Sam Phillips, you know, really changed the world.
Well, still today, Elvis still has a considerable following, as demonstrated by the thousands of people who visit Graceland every year just for the candlelight vigil to commemorate his death. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on these so-called Elvis junkies?
Well, you know, for the first 2 or 3 years after Elvis passed away, it was very difficult, personally for me, to see the celebrations, especially because they happened in the summertime. And that's when Elvis died in August. And it was a little hard for me, but then I came to some of the functions. George Klein has a great function at the university where people talk about, friends of Elvis talk about their memories and stuff. And I've done that a few times over the years, and it's a real great way with a lot of real nice people around the world to feel the presence of my friend, who I still miss, you know, very much. He was the best person to me in my life.
Well, along that line, when I was speaking to you earlier, you were talking about the man behind the icon. Yes. What was your personal relationship with Elvis?
Well, you know, I was really into music. My mother passed away when I was a year old, and I lived with grandparents and aunts and uncles. And so at 10 years old, I was listening to Dewey Phillips on WHBQ. I was really into rhythm and blues music. That was my music. And when I was 12, I went to the local park, Dave Wells Community Center. I lived in North Memphis, went to Holy Names, and Elvis lived a couple of blocks from me and George Klein. And I went to the park one Sunday just to see if I could play ball with somebody. And there were 5 older guys trying to get up a football game. That's how unpopular Elvis was at that point. And they asked me to play, and of course, and we went in the huddle, and I had heard, that was the week that Elvis's record was first released in Memphis. And I thought, oh my God, I know who this guy is. And because Dewey said he was a guy from Humes High. And I was really into James Dean and Marlon Brando. And Elvis, he had all those things before he had a movie or a hit record or anything. I've seen stars become stars after they get all the you know, they have 2 or 3 hit records or movies. But Elvis had this thing that you kind of wanted to identify with. He was like that lovable rebel, James Dean with a smile, if you will. So I was pretty impressed, and we used to play football every Sunday. And then he got very popular, where he didn't have enough people to play. Everybody wanted to get into football games after a few months. And I think he remembered that I liked him before it was really popular, and he always let me play. And then when he bought Graceland, he would invite me up, or I'd go to the movies. And then my senior year of college, I was going to be a football coach and a history teacher. This was 10 years after knowing Elvis, and he asked me to go to work for him. And I really got to see the whole pendulum. I saw the ultimate rebel kind of go through the whole things, being the conservative, and I really learned a lot living with Elvis and working on his movies and his tours. I learned a lot about the music business because he was a real honest, true soul. And it really helped me open my business and the people that I was able to represent and everything. I learned a lot of that from Elvis Presley. He's a very smart man, much more so than the image that we know in the public.
Well, thank you very much for being on the show today, Mr. Schilling. Thank you for sharing some of your memories with Elvis.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
I would like to thank my other guests, George Klein and Sam Phillips, for giving us a personal look at the life of one of the true legends of our era. Memphis history, pop music, and our culture have been transformed through the magic and talent of Elvis Presley. We move now into the 21st century. We all owe a debt of gratitude to this entertainment giant, whose music will surely live on for years to come. I'm Alex Jarman, and on behalf of all of us here at Germantown Community Television, thank you for watching Crosstalk, and we hope to see you again next week.